Hello, my name is Mark Ellis from Stick and Rudder Studios, and today I'd like to take you through a tutorial on how to install and configure X-ATC-Chatter for X-Plane 10 or X-Plane 11. So the first thing I think we're going to want to do is take a look at how do you actually install the product. When you download X-ATC-Chatter, it gets delivered as a zip archive, and typically, depending on your browser, when you download it, it'll put it in your downloads directory. And here you can see I've got an example of it. So one thing about downloading it, it is a pretty big archive. It has a lot of WAV files in it, which are the clips that get played back in X-ATC-Chatter. So as you can see here, it's around 700 megabytes. So as you're downloading it, whether that be from the xplane.org store, or from Gumroad, depending upon where you purchased the product. Be patient, it can take a little while for it to get down. Once you get it down, you're just going to want to unzip it. And I happen to like 7-zip. It's one of my favorite zip utilities. So I'm just going to come over here. I'm going to say extract here. And this will take a few seconds depending on how fast your machine is. But again, the archive is pretty big. Okay, now that it's unzipped, all you want to do is take this resulting X-ATC-Chatter folder, and you're just going to copy it. And we're going to put it over into our X-Plane 11 plugins folder. So you're going to navigate to wherever you have X-Plane 11 installed. Go to the resources directory, the plugins directory, and then just going to want to paste it right in here. Okay, now that that's complete, we can go ahead and fire up X-Plane 11 or 10, depending upon what you're running, and let's walk through how we configure and operate X-ATC-Chatter. Okay, now that we've got X-Plane up and running, let's take a look at how X-ATC-Chatter works. So the first thing you're going to do is come up to your plugins directory, and you should see a menu item here called X-ATC-Chatter. If you see it, that means it's installed properly. If it's missing, you probably want to go back and make sure that you really did paste the X-ATC-Chatter folder into the plugins directory properly, and you didn't put it in an improper place, or potentially in an X-Plane installation, an alternate installation that you may not be using right at the moment. So first thing you do is just open up the control panel, and let's take a look at at what this is all about here. So if we kind of go down the buttons here, the most important one right out of the chute is whether or not you want to play chatter, and this is sort of like your master control as to whether you want chatter to play or not play. You also have down here whether you're going to use COM1 or COM2 in the case where you're using automatic controllers, which I'll talk about in just a couple of minutes. Also down here are all of your regions. Now right at the moment, the current version of X-ATC-Chatter, we've got a pretty good coverage in the United States. We have over 1,700 clips in the US, over 1,700 in Canada, and over 1,300 in Europe. And little by little, as the volunteers work on things, we'll get more of these filled out. I think Oceania is probably going to be the next one we're really going to try to focus on and get that built up. So these are the regions, and you manually select the regions that you're flying in. It's not automatic at the moment, particularly in the case where in Canada, the United States, you can actually multiple select these, right? So in the case of Canada, United States, the dialects are kind of similar. You won't really notice a huge difference. So, combining these two, it'll actually play a lot more clips, in sequence. So you can pick them. Okay, and then over on the right-hand side here, you've kind of got the control over which controllers you're listening to. Okay, and there's a couple of ways you can operate this thing. You can either operate it all manually, where you're coming in here and picking the controller that you want to listen to. or you can put it on automatic controllers, and in that case the plugin will actually look at what radio frequency you've got tuned to, and it does know where all the pardon me, it does know where all of the transmitters are. Particularly in the case of the United States and Canada, we've got relatively accurate locations for the center transmitter locations. And for the other aspects like approach and departure, ground and tower, those are actually all in your scenery databases. So they're relatively accurate. It's as accurate as the scenery that you've got loaded. For outside the United States, Europe and the rest of the world, we haven't found a good source for where the center transmitters are located, so we kind of fake it out. We basically assume that they're at major airports and they're kind of sprinkled around the area. But the bottom line is, with automatic controllers, it knows what frequency you're tuned to, it knows which transmitters are within range of your radios, and what it will do is it'll pick the nearest facility type to play chatter for, based upon where your plane is at and which one it can find as the closest and within range. Okay, so let's just start this thing up in manual mode, right? So I don't have automatic controllers set. So if I just start playing chatter.
Southwest 562 is 4 north with India. Southwest 562 on ground, only 26 left, follow the next 90 off your left.
And I can manually.
Okay, follow the next 90 off our left, Southwest 562, we're in the Apache 10. Okay.
And I can just manually pick a different controller here. I'm going to pick center. So in a second here, it should come up and start playing chatter. And you can set these delays too. So, down here I've got this set right now for a minimum delay of 5 seconds and a maximum delay of 30.
Diamond 3 arrival with 1205.
135, I think it's set .6, Delta 2450.
1280, 299.
35-3, Delta 2550.
All right, I'm just going to shut that off for a minute so I can talk without it talking over the top of me. So that's how you can play it all manually if you want. And there are commands that you can map to joystick buttons and things on your yoke and things if you want to, manually kind of advance this thing through the various controllers as you're flying along. The most common practice, though, is to operate this in automatic controllers. And again, as I was saying, the way automatic controllers work is it will actually look at what frequency you've got currently tuned. This also works in conjunction with this radio power button here. So as an example, if I have this checked and the plane's not powered up and the avionics are not on, the radios are not on, it's not going to play any chatter. So with these things set, if I play chatter on, it's not going to play anything because there's no radio power on there. So let's power up the plane.
General Edward Lawrence Logan International Information Papa. 1900 Zulu weather. Wind calm, visibility more than 10. Sky conditions 5600 few, temperature 14, dew point -25. Altimeter 2992. Arriving runways 33 left, 33 right, 32, departing runways 04 left, 04 right. Advise on an...
And clearance, American 20.
Okay, so I'm just going to stop that for a minute. You'll notice that what happened here is when I fired the plane up, the radio COM1 was tuned to ATIS. And it immediately started to play the X-plane ATIS messaging that you typically hear. And if you look carefully, what X-ATC-Chatter does is it knows that you are tuned to an ATIS facility, and it pauses chatter. It's not going to try to play chatter at the same time that you're connected to ATIS. While that was going on, I also brought up this other window here, which is the nearest facilities window. And what this does is it shows you all the frequencies that are within, it'll show you up to 40 that are within 75 nautical miles. And right now I'm looking for all of the facilities. But as an example, if I wanted to say just look for, say as an example, I just want to see the clearance frequencies. I can pick that, and this shows me all of the clearance facilities in sorted basically by how far away they are from me at the current moment. So here we've got, Boston clearance delivery is on 121.65. Okay, And same, I could come in here and say I want to see the ground ones too. So see, I get Boston ground, Boston delivery, and then it kind of goes out to the other airports that are in the surrounding area, out to a maximum of 75 nautical miles, or up to the point where 40 are being shown. Okay. So let's go back over this again. What I'm going to do is I'm currently connected to Boston delivery. So with automatic controllers on and radio power on, if I turn this on.
Project at 327 is signature with X-ray Charlie West. Hey, this is 327 clearance. Go to Jaeger via the Smoky 2 departure, Smoky intersection, then it's filed.
And as you can see, it started to play some chatter, okay, from clearance delivery, okay? And I think if I come in here and I put on Canada, we actually, if we do this again, we actually might hear some Canadian dialect.
Plan Hello, Sergeant 7264, identifier 120 Whiskey, and we have echo.
Jordan 7264, Toronto clearance, PDC correct, contact apron 1220, time for push.
Get it.
Well, that really was a Canadian clip. Unfortunately, we didn't quite get somebody that has a little bit of the Canadian accent to it, but you will hear that, okay? When you pick the various, different facilities. And I think if I come in here and I pick Europe, you'll probably hear a similar thing.
Delivery, very good morning to you. It's the Ryanair 9 Alpha Tango, westbound 120 Romeo with Lima, QNH 1029er, Echo South. Clearance to Munich, please.
Ryanair 9 Alpha Tango, good morning, clear to Munich. Flight plan route, Liffey 5 Alpha departure, squawk 2172, airborne frequency 132.575, and a flop time of 0858.
Copy, Liffey 5 Alpha 28, squawk 2172, airborne frequency 132.575, and CQC 0858, Ryanair 9 Alpha Tango. Stand 120 Romeo, will call you fully ready. Good morning, thanks.
Thanks, Ryanair 9 Alpha Tango, all correct.
All right, let's just shut that off. We'll go back over to the United States and Canada. Okay, so I think you get a sense of how that works. Now let's take a look at what happens when I actually change frequencies, okay? Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. Either A, you can tune your frequencies by bringing this little window up here and just clicking on, the one you want to go to, like that, or like that. But that's not the most natural way to do it. The typical way to do it is you would tune your radios, like in a real world. So let's just actually come down here and bring up our radio panel. Okay. And let's try this. What I'm going to do is turn it on. We're going to be configured to Boston delivery. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to tune to ground by just clicking this button. And then I'll probably tune to, let's actually come up here and get a list of the tower frequencies. And I'll do this one okay by hand. Okay.
Clearance, good morning, it's April 7663. PDC is...
Now in a minute, it should start playing some ground chatter.
Ground Air Canada 410 coming up, Alpha Lima.
Can 410, ground runway 06 left, data Whiskey, altimeter 2982, taxi Tango, cross runway 33 right, Echo Delta.
Tango, cross CC right, Echo Delta, Air Canada 410.
All right, let me manually tune 128.8, which is the tower. Notice I've got that in there. And in a minute, it should switch over to tower.
X-233 Heavy, contact departure 1288 in the air, clear takeoff runway 23.
1288 airborne, clear for takeoff runway 23, FedEx 233 Heavy.
All right, I think we're just going to drop this delay down here a little bit so that as we're demoing it goes a little bit faster. Okay, let's take a look at a few of these other buttons up here. So we talked about, all of these. These are all the different controller types. And one thing that's interesting is we do have different clips for departure versus destination. And they're basically the same types of clips. It's just that they're put in two different folders. And the reason for that is that if you leave a given airport, what you'd like to probably do is hear a different set of clips, when you land. You don't want to hear the same controller voice again. As we get more of these, you probably have less of a chance of that happening. But the system does know at first when you load a plane, and then once the plane gets a certain distance away from its origin place, it'll switch over to automatically picking things out of the destination folders to play. We talked a little bit about the delay settings down here. You can set your min and max number of seconds between clips. Just set them and hit that little set delay button. This down here sets your, saves your preferences. This override, center override thing up here, what this allows you to do is, in the cases where we don't have very good locations for the center frequencies outside the United States and Canada, we do try to fake them. But if you check this on, if I tune the radio to 123.27, it'll automatically give me center type clips. So that's one way you can kind of make it real easy for you if you're not flying in the US and Canada. If you don't want to hassle with it, with the centers, you could just know if I check this and I tune 123.27, I'm always going to end up getting center chatter. And we picked this particular frequency because there's only one airport that I could find in all of the scenery that I had downloaded that had 123.27 for something, for some other facility like that ground or tower. I think in the manual I tell you which airport that is, but it was the only one I could find. So it was kind of a unique frequency that, we could use to always do that. But for the most part, it'll work if you take a look at what's up here in the nearest facilities and take a look at what's being shown. Last couple of buttons, we have this refresh facility cache on X-Plane start. One of the things that X-ATC-Chatter does when it starts up is it'll read all of your scenery files, including your custom scenery, and it'll get the radio frequencies for things like ground and tower, approach, departure, those types of information. And depending on how fast your machine is and how much custom scenery you've got downloaded, it can take a few seconds, to do this. I think on my machine, I have quite a bit of custom scenery loaded. It takes about 15 seconds every time you start up X-Plane to go through and do this. If you haven't loaded any scenery in a while, you can uncheck this like this, and save this. And then what will happen is it won't do that every time. But do keep in mind that if you're not refreshing it and you get an update from X-Plane with some new scenery, or you download or purchase some scenery, what you may find out is that what's being referenced in the scenery for those facilities, X-ATC-Chatter won't know about it, or they'll be at different frequencies. So if you can tolerate it, I would leave this on. The last checkbox up here is external integrations. We do have an integration with X-Life at the moment. I expect maybe down the road some other ATC programs like 124th ATC or some others may come along and try to integrate with X-ATC-Chatter. And if you're running X-Life ATC, you're going to want to check this box. And what that does is when X-Life ATC is trying to talk with you, it can control X-ATC-Chatter and tell it to pause, so that you don't have the two things kind of talking over the top of one another. If you're not running X-Life or any of the other programs that advertise that they integrate with X-ATC-Chatter, you can pretty much leave this off. Last thing you've got is your ATC volume, your chatter volume here, and your engine volume. I find, frankly, on some planes the engine noise is so loud that you sometimes have a hard time hearing the chatter or hearing even ATIS. So this allows you to kind of control that easily. If you feel that you can't hear the chatter very well and your engine sounds are a little bit too loud, you can fuss with this and adjust it. So I think that kind of gives you a pretty good feel for how it all works, and I think you'll find that it's pretty useful. One other thing is, I'm not going to demonstrate it because my video capture software doesn't like it very much, but you can pop these windows out if you're on X-Plane 11, and you can put them over on separate monitors if you wanted to do that. And the last thing is, you don't have to have these windows open. Once you configure this thing and you save your settings, generally you can kind of leave these down like this and just tune your radios. And it should just automatically start playing the right chatter based upon where you are located and what you're tuned to. The last comment I want to make is for those of you that are using X-ATC-Chatter with Pilot ATC, The installation instructions are a little bit different. You actually won't install this anything in the plugins directory in X-Plane 11. You'll just extract the chatter files, and there's a separate tutorial video that shows you how to do that for Pilot to ATC and how to copy the chatter files from the X-ATC-Chatter folder over to where they need to go in Pilot to ATC. So that's a second tutorial video that you can take a look at if you are operating with Pilot to ATC. Okay. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoy the program.